Before we begin, take a moment to settle in. Where are you listening from right now? And what time is it where you are? Whether it is late at night or early in the morning, whether you are alone or drifting towards sleep, this story will move slowly. There is nothing you need to do, nothing you need to remember. Just stay here and listen. It is a cold night in a small medieval village. The air is still, broken only by the faint creaking of wooden beams and the distant howl of an unseen wind. Under a moonlit sky, thatched roof cottages huddle in darkness, their hearth fires dimmed to embers. Families lie in their beds without truly sleeping, eyes open in the gloom as they listen to the night. Every rustle outside, every far off cry of a night creature sets hearts pounding, for fear hangs thick in the silence. They dare not dream. Instead, each family whispers a prayer into the darkness and hopes to see the morning light. This fearful vigil has become a grim routine, night after night, beneath the same silent stars. Dawn eventually breaks, pale and quiet. A damp mist clings to the earth as the first hints of light reveal the humble outlines of the village. One by one, heavy wooden doors creak open and cautious faces peer out, grateful that this morning has come without calamity. The cold dew sparkles on the sparse winter-brown grass as a farmer steps into the grey light, pulling his threadbare cloak tighter about his shoulders. He breathes out, watching his breath cloud the air, and utters a silent prayer of thanks for the stillness. In the faint glow, the village looks almost peaceful. The low cottages, with their thatched roofs and wattle and daub walls, stand close together, clustered for comfort. Smoke begins to curl from a few chimney holes as embers are stirred back to life inside hearths. A little distance away, the squat stone chapel of the local church emerges from the fog, its single bell tower watching over the cottages like a silent guardian. At the edge of the village, dark shapes of bare trees mark the beginning of the woods, and beyond that lie the open fields where the villagers toil when they can. Not all is untouched by war's long shadow. Near the village edge, the blackened timbers of a barn that burned seasons ago still jut from the earth, a stark reminder of the violence that once swept through here. A section of the wooden fence around the fields lies broken and unrepaired, smashed under the weight of armored riders who passed through in the last campaign. One cottage at the end of the lane now stands abandoned, its thatch partially caved in and door ajar. The family who once lived there fled months ago to distant relatives after soldiers plundered their home, leaving the house to rot in sorrowful silence. These scars of old raids are a constant reminder that even on a tranquil morning, the threat of war is never truly far. The farmer, a gaunt middle-aged man with calloused hands, trudges toward the small shed that serves as his stable. Inside, a lone cow and a pair of goats stir in the cold, their breaths steaming in the gloom. He murmurs softly to them, a habit to keep them calm, and scoops a measure of precious hay into their trough. Every mouthful of feed is measured carefully now, for hay has grown scarce under the pressures of these hard times. His wife emerges from their cottage, a woolen shawl drawn tightly around her. With a clay jug in hand, she makes her way to the village well. The bucket's iron chain rattles as she draws water, the sound unnaturally loud in the morning hush. Water sloshes, and her fingers turn numb against the cold metal, but she barely notices, lost in thought. She recalls how just months ago the Lord's men came through to requisition stores for the war, sacks of grain, bundles of dried herbs, even hay for the army's horses. Their own winter provisions were thinned so much that each day since has been an exercise in making do with less. The farmer returns with a pail of milk froth from the cow and finds his young son awake, rubbing sleep from his eyes in the doorway. The boy is perhaps 10 years old, barefoot on the cold ground and shivering slightly in his linen shirt. The father pats the child's shoulder and hands him a small wooden bucket. Together they move to the chicken coop at the side of the house. A scant few chickens cluck softly inside. Many were lost the past year to hunger and theft. Father and son searched the straw for any eggs the hens might have laid. Today they find only one small egg, which the farmer cups gently in his rough palm. It will be added to the thin porridge for the family's breakfast, a rare bit of richness in lean times. As they step out of the coop, the farmer's eyes instinctively scan the tree line and the distant road that winds toward the horizon. Even now, in the calm of morning, vigilance has become second nature. He remembers too well the last time armed men came this way. The memory flickers in his mind. Distant dust clouds, the thundering of hooves, and how he barely ushered his family into the woods in time to hide. Nothing stirs on the road now, but he remains watchful, hand resting on the wooden staff he carries, both as a walking stick and a makeshift defense. Other villagers are starting their day as well. An elderly man leads a donkey cart slowly down the rutted dirt lane, heading out to gather firewood before the sun climbs high. Two women, wrapped in shawls, meet by the well with quiet nods, drawing what water they need and exchanging hushed murmurs about the day's tasks. No one speaks loudly. Even in daylight, there is a palpable caution in their voices, as if loud cheer could tempt misfortune. A few children dart from one doorway to another, clutching bits of bread for their breakfast, but their usual laughter is subdued. The village moves through its morning routine under an unspoken pall of tension that has lingered for months, a tension that never fully lifts. For these villagers, war is not a distant tale of valor or glory. It is a living presence that seeps into every corner of their existence. They know little of the quarrels of kings or the ambitions of great lords that spark these conflicts. What they know are the concrete hardships that war brings to their door. War means hunger, as fields go untilled and stored grain is taken away to feed armies. War means uncertainty, never knowing when a troop of soldiers might appear on the horizon to demand provisions, or worse, since even humble folk are considered valid targets in warfare. War means the hollowing out of the village itself, as able-bodied sons depart to fulfill duties to a lord's levy or simply disappear in the chaos, leaving their families to wonder if they will ever return. Most of all, war means fear, a fear that becomes the backdrop of every moment, from sunrise to sunset, and through the cold, silent watches of the night. After breakfast, the farmer and a few other men gather with ox and plow at the edge of a field. The soil needs turning for spring planting. Last year, this very field lay fallow and wild because war had made it too dangerous to till the open land. Now they hope to coax grain from it again. The farmer clicks his tongue and urges the weary ox forward. The wooden plough blade bites into the earth, and clods of dark soil turn over, releasing a faint scent of damp clay and last year's decay. As he guides the plough, the farmer remembers how weeds and thistles overran these furrows when no one dared work here. The memory of those wasted seasons weighs on him, but today, at least, he is doing the work he was born to do, the work that sustains them all. At the next furrow, another man takes a turn with the plough. As they swap places, he murmurs to the farmer under his breath, eyes darting to the tree line. Word is, a traveling peddler passed through the neighboring hamlet with news of fighting not far from here. The farmer's hands tighten on the plough handles. He had suspected as much. There were whispers over the winter of armies gathering to the south. Rumors spread slowly from town to town, by way of merchants and wanderers, until even isolated villages like theirs heard faint echoes of the realm's turmoil. Still, to hear that battles have been fought close by sends a chill through his blood. He imagines for a moment the distant boom of siege engines or the glare of torches on the horizon, and he has to take a breath to steady himself. The light of midday falls gently on the countryside, illuminating the patchwork of brown winter fields and leafless hedges. Under different circumstances, it might have been a pleasant day to be outdoors, but none of them take notice of the pale beauty around them. By midday, the sun peeks through the clouds, and a fragile warmth falls on the field. The men pause their labor to rest and eat a little. They sit on a fallen log at the field's edge, passing a leather flask of weak ale between them and chewing on coarse brown bread. The mood is somber. One of the younger farmers, barely a man and newly married, voices what they have all been thinking. If war is truly drawing near again, should they send their families away to safety? A bitter chuckle comes from the oldest man in the group, a grizzled fellow with a scar across his cheek. Where would they go? he asks, gesturing at the vast expanse of open land beyond. They all know the truth. Beyond their familiar fields lies uncertainty and peril. In times like these, the roads themselves teem with danger. Lawless mercenaries and brigands roam freely, making travel nearly impossible for ordinary folk. Even armed merchant caravans have been set upon, and refugees wandering in search of shelter often meet a bad end. At this, the young man falls silent, holding his bread with a trembling hand. There may be no easy escape from what is coming. Gradually, their conversation trails off. The men chew in thoughtful quiet, the only sounds the crunch of bread and the distant cawing of a crow somewhere beyond the fields. Each of them is lost in his own troubled calculations. The scarred old farmer absently runs a finger along the white line on his cheek, a souvenir from some long ago skirmish, while he stares at the horizon. The younger man closes his eyes for a moment, perhaps silently praying or picturing the face of his new wife back home. Overhead, thin clouds drift across the sun, and a cool breeze ruffles the dormant grasses. What should be an ordinary day's respite feels instead like the last calm hours before a storm. The men finish their meager meal and resume ploughing in resolute silence. Each wrestles with his own thoughts of what to do if war engulfs their lands again. The afternoon sun is dipping westward when a shout comes from the direction of the village. One of the women is standing outside her cottage, pointing toward the southern road. The farmers halt and shade their eyes. There, in the distance beyond the fields, a small company of riders is approaching. A ripple of alarm passes through the villagers who are outdoors. The farmer's heart leaps into his throat. He quickly unyokes the ox from the plough, patting its flank as if the beast shares his anxiety. Instinctively, the men scatter to warn others and to fetch any sort of weapon available: an old spear, a wood axe, a stout stick. The farmer grabs his son by the hand and hustles him back toward the cluster of cottages, where the women are already ushering the smaller children inside. Faces peek out from cracked doorways, eyes wide with fear and uncertainty. Could this be the enemy at last, riding straight into their hamlet? As the riders near, the village elder, a stooped man with trembling hands, steps forward in the road, holding up a palm in greeting and supplication. The leading horseman, clad in a muddied surcoat bearing their lord's emblem, slows his mount. These are not foreign invaders, but soldiers of the realm, a patrol or a levy heading off to join the larger forces. Relief wars with apprehension in the villagers' hearts. Soldiers loyal to their lord might spare them the sword, but they often carry demands of their own. The horseman's voice is harsh from the road. He barks an order for water and fodder for the horses, and bread if there is any to spare. At once, a few villagers rush to comply. A girl runs with a bucket to the well as her mother hurriedly fetches a sack with the last of their grain stores. The farmer's wife, heart pounding, brings out 2 loaves of coarse bread that she'd been saving. She bows her head low as she offers them up, not daring to meet the soldier's eyes. The riders dismount and drink greedily from the bucket, their horses stamping impatiently. Dust and sweat streak the men's faces. They are young and stern, weapons dangling at their sides. One of them glances around at the gathered villagers with an unreadable expression that makes the farmer's blood run cold. But these men are in a hurry. After watering their horses and snatching a quick bite from the donated bread, the troop leader swings back into his saddle. He gives a curt nod, whether in gratitude or mere acknowledgement is hard to tell, and warns in a flat tone that a large enemy force was seen a day's ride south. The villagers should keep watch. With that, he spurs his horse, and the band of riders moves on, thundering along the road and leaving only a cloud of dust in their wake. For a long moment, no one in the village moves. They stand in the settling dust, holding their breaths, listening as the hoofbeats recede. A collective sigh of relief escapes when it's clear the soldiers truly are gone. Some of the women silently cross themselves in thanks that the encounter did not end in violence. But that relief is fleeting. The warning the soldiers left behind now hangs over them like a storm cloud. A large enemy force a day's ride to the south. The villagers begin speaking all at once, voices tense and urgent. Mothers clutch their children, asking what they should do. The village elder tries to quiet everyone so they can think. The farmer feels his own hands shaking as he realizes the time they dreaded may soon be at hand. He exchanges a grave look with his wife, who has drawn their son and daughter close. Everyone knows what an enemy force nearby could mean. If no army stands in its way, it will roll over the land like a flood, and villages like theirs will be the first to suffer. They have heard the tales of what invading soldiers do, how they torch farms and storehouses to starve their foes into submission, putting the countryside to flame as a deliberate strategy of war. In their lords' halls, war might be a matter of honor and strategy, but here war means that homes and livelihoods could be reduced to ash in an afternoon. The villagers know that if those enemy soldiers come this way, they will receive no mercy simply for being simple folk living on this land. Quickly, the village elder calls for everyone to gather by the chapel. In troubled times like these, his word serves as guidance. The people form a tight circle, children pressed close to their parents, as options are frantically discussed. Some argue they should all make for the Lord's castle north of here, seeking shelter behind its walls. But others point out that the castle is half a day's journey on foot, and there is no guarantee they would be allowed in, or that they could outrun the enemy to get there. A few suggest barricading themselves in the stone church, believing its sturdy walls might protect them if worst comes to worst. At this, the scarred old farmer shakes his head vehemently. He reminds them of a grim tale. Not long ago, when a nearby village was overrun, the people had locked themselves in their church to hide from the marauders, only for the attackers to set the roof ablaze and slaughter them as they fled the flames. A shudder passes through the crowd at his words. They all realize that turning the church into a fortress could become a death trap. Gradually, a consensus forms. If the enemy comes, the villagers will not wait to be trampled or butchered. They will take to the woods and hide deep among the trees, or in whatever secret corners of the land they know. Each family nods in agreement. They know the hidden hollows by the stream, the old ravine under the ridge, even a few shallow caves tucked into the hillside. Those places will be their refuge if the worst arrives. It wouldn't be the first time. Many here still remember previous close calls. Nights when they hid in mud and thorny underbrush while troops passed by on the road. Without wasting time, the villagers set about readying themselves. They disperse back to their homes to pack whatever they can carry if a sudden flight becomes necessary. Worn blankets, water skins, a little salted meat, and hard cheese. These are gathered and tied into bundles. Precious belongings and food that cannot be carried are swiftly hidden. The farmer and his wife dig a pit beneath loose boards in their floor, secreting away a small sack of barley and the family's few silver coins. Across the lane, the blacksmith wraps his best tools in oiled cloth and buries them behind his forge. Another family leads their remaining pig into the forest now, tethering it in a dense thicket far from prying eyes. In each humble home, similar scenes play out. A quiet frenzy of hiding and securing what little they have, in hopes it might be spared from the coming storm. They all know that if soldiers arrive, anything left in plain sight could be stolen or destroyed. As twilight falls, a hush drapes over the settlement. Before retreating to their homes for the night, the villagers gather one last time in the open space by the chapel. The village elder, clutching a wooden cross that hangs around his neck, raises a hand in quiet benediction. In a trembling voice, he leads them in a simple prayer for protection, his words invoking mercy and deliverance for their humble community. Men, women, and children bow their heads. Some weep silently, others stare resolutely at the ground. A soft chorus of Amen passes through the crowd. Then, with the daylight almost gone and resolve steeled, they disperse to face the long night ahead. Evening draws in before they know it. The sun sinks low, painting the west in sullen reds and purples, a beautiful sky belying the dread in everyone's hearts. One by one, candles and lamps are carefully lit inside the cottages, their glow kept minimal and hidden behind shutters. No one wishes to draw unnecessary attention. A decision is made that tonight, and for as many nights as needed, they will keep watch in shifts. A handful of able-bodied men volunteer for the first watch, the farmer among them. They arm themselves as best they can. A rusty sword handed down from someone's grandfather. A few bows with quivers of hunting arrows, axes, and sharp knives tucked into belts. They stationed themselves at the southern edge of the village, where a hedgerow and a shallow ditch mark the boundary. There, partially concealed, they peer into the deepening twilight for any sign of movement on the road. Inside the farmer's cottage, the atmosphere is tense but determined. The one-room hut is dim and low-ceilinged, its walls coated with years of hearth smoke, and its small windows shuttered tight. The farmer's wife stirs a thin vegetable pottage in an iron pot over the low fire, careful not to let the flames flare too brightly. In the dimness, her two children sit close to a neighbor, a woman named Marta, who has been living with them since the last harvest. Marta is a widow from a village to the south that was destroyed in the previous year's fighting. She holds the farmer's youngest on her lap, humming a soft lullaby under her breath to soothe the anxious child. The tune is a melancholy one, a folk song about safe harbors and guiding stars. It wavers in the hush of the hut, barely audible above the crackle of the fire. As the children's eyelids grow heavy, the farmer's wife ladles out the meager supper into wooden bowls. They eat in near silence. Only the crackling fire and the quiet slurps of the little ones break the stillness. After supper, the children curl up together on a straw mattress in the corner. The farmer's wife and Marta sit close by, speaking in hushed voices so as not to wake them. In the flickering glow, the wife gently asks, "Marta, when it happened, did hiding save anyone?" Her voice trembles on the question she has been too afraid to ask before. Marta's eyes glisten as she gazes at the embers. She is silent for a long time, and the farmer's wife begins to apologize for bringing it up. But Marta shakes her head and places a hand over the younger woman's. In a steady, quiet tone, she begins to recount the night that changed her life. Marta speaks haltingly at first, then with a soft, detached clarity, as if part of her is still in that night. She tells of how, on a moonless evening, without warning, her old village was set upon. It began with the sound of hoofbeats echoing out of the darkness. By the time the alarm bell clanged frantically, torches were already flickering at the far end of the main road. She remembers people screaming, the frantic shouts of neighbors as everyone scattered in confusion. Her own husband had snatched up a pitchfork and urged her to run. She ran, heart pounding, clutching the crucifix at her neck, while behind her the night erupted in flames. Marta pauses, her eyes distant. The farmer's wife gently squeezes her hand, and after a moment, Marta continues in a whisper. She describes how she and a few others fled into the fields and woods. They hid in a drainage ditch among tall reeds, submerged to the waist in cold, marshy water to avoid detection. For hours, she listened to the horrifying sounds carrying through the darkness. Men shouting in a foreign tongue, the crackle of fires consuming homes, and desperate, piercing wails that seemed to go on and on. Marta's voice falters as she recalls those cries, and the farmer's wife realizes there are tears on her own cheeks now. Only with the first light of dawn did the noises finally cease. When Marta crept back to what remained of her village at sunrise, a thick, smoky haze hung in the air. She could scarcely recognize her home. The cottages were charred skeletons of wood and thatch, still smoldering in places. The little chapel's roof had collapsed, its stone walls blackened with soot. Not a single living soul stirred in the lanes. In fact, not much of anything living was left at all. There were no cows lowing, no goats bleating, no chickens scuttling in the yards. The usual morning chorus of farmyard sounds had been silenced entirely. Marta recounts how eerie it was that even the natural sounds of birds and animals were absent in that scorched, empty place. It was as if life itself had been driven out. She walked through the desolation in a daze. Here and there she saw the limp forms of those who hadn't escaped, friends and kin now strewn amid the ruins. She spares the details, but her voice becomes brittle as she mentions recognizing a charred shawl that had belonged to her neighbor and the still form of a child's body by the village well. The farmer's wife brings a hand to her mouth, eyes brimming, and whispers a broken, "I'm so sorry." Marta nods at the condolence, collecting herself to finish her tale. In the end, she says, she was one of the very few who survived that night. By fortune or fate, the raiders never discovered her where she hid. When she emerged to find everything gone, she knew there was nothing left for her there. Numb with grief, she simply started walking. For days, she wandered through the countryside, avoiding roads, living off bits of dried berries and roots, steering clear of any unfamiliar sound. At times, she crossed paths with wild animals, deer that darted through abandoned fields, hares that watched her quietly from afar, as if wondering where all the people had gone. The world had felt emptied out and forsaken. Eventually, Marta found her way here, to this village, half-starved and heartsick. The farmer's wife embraces her gently, and Marta offers a faint, sad smile. "You saved me," she whispers, wiping her eyes. In truth, the villagers had taken her in when she arrived, giving her food, warmth, and a place among them. For a while, the two women sit in silence except for quiet sobs and sniffles. Finally, the farmer's wife finds her voice and asks the question burning in her mind. "Do you think we have a chance?" Marta knows what she means. She looks toward the sleeping children and then back at her friend. "If they come," Marta begins slowly, choosing her words, "all we can do is what you are already doing. Hide, run, pray, and even then," her voice drops to a near inaudible murmur, It is mostly luck, I think, who lives and who doesn't. She recalls how she survived by chance, spared perhaps only because she was hidden and the raiders moved on quickly. So many others who did the same perished regardless. In war, survival can seem cruelly random. The farmer's wife presses a shaking hand to her lips, fighting back tears. She understands. No matter how carefully they prepare, there are no guarantees. Swallowing hard, she reaches for a wooden rosary hanging on the wall and presses it into Marta's hands. Together, the two women bow their heads over the worn beads. In the dim firelight, they pray in unison, praying for their children, for their husbands out on watch, for the village, and for the strength to face whatever dawn might bring. Outside, the night deepens. The farmer stands at his post by the hedgerow, spear in hand. The world beyond the village is cloaked in darkness, the fields silvered by a thin moonlight that filters through low clouds. Now and then, a night bird calls, or an owl hoots from the woods. Each time the farmer tenses, every sense strained. Once a lone wolf howls at the waning moon far beyond the fields, a haunting sound that sends a shiver through the watchers. He casts his mind back to years ago, before the war crept so close, when nights were not filled with such dread. He remembers a summer evening of his youth, when the villagers had gathered after a good harvest. There had been a bonfire in this very field behind him. He can almost recall the sound of a fiddle playing a lively tune, the way neighbors danced and clapped under the stars. The laughter had been loud and carefree then, children chasing fireflies while the adults sang old folk songs. On those nights, the darkness held no terror, only the gentle chirp of crickets and the distant hoot of an owl to lull them to sleep. The memory feels like it belongs to another world. He holds it in his mind like a fragile lantern, trying to draw a bit of warmth from it now as he stands guard. As the hours crawl on, the farmer's mind wanders uneasily. He thinks of his wife and children, picturing them huddled together in their cottage. He prays silently that if danger comes, he will have time to get them to safety. He glances up at the sky. The stars are hidden behind drifting clouds, but he finds the North Star peeking through, a tiny pinprick of light steady in the moving darkness. He focuses on it, drawing a bit of comfort from its constancy. The night air carries a faint scent of smoke. At first, he panics, thinking it might be the village, but then he realizes it's on the wind from somewhere far off, perhaps woods burning leagues away, or another village set alight in the distance. The realization is sobering. War is out there, not a day's ride off, and the wind itself brings tidings of it. In that moment, the farmer feels very small and very helpless, a simple man with a crude weapon standing against the vast darkness. Yet He stands all the same, because he must. Sometime after midnight, just as the farmer begins to think the threat might pass them by for this night, one of the watchers hisses softly, "Look there!" The man points toward the southern sky. The farmer follows the line of his finger and feels his stomach drop against the blackness. There is a distant, throbbing glow, faint, but unmistakable to those who know what to fear. It is the orange-red flicker of great fires just at the horizon's edge. Though miles away, the very clouds seem to blush with it. The men exchange tense looks. They all know what that glow means. Somewhere out there, a settlement is burning. The farmer feels a numb chill that has nothing to do with the night air. He grips his spear until his knuckles ache. One of the older watchers mutters a curse under his breath and immediately makes the sign of the cross, whispering a plea for mercy. They debate in low voices whether to ring the church bell to rouse the village. But the flames are still distant. To ring now might only spread panic. In the end, they decide to wait and keep a steadfast watch through what remains of the night. And so the night wears on. Every minute feels drawn out into eternity as the villagers keep their vigil. Some, like the farmer and his fellow watchmen, remain wide awake under the starry sky, eyes fixed on that ominous glow to the south. Others doze fitfully in their homes, fully dressed and ready to flee at the slightest alarm, their dreams fraught with fear. The quiet is absolute. No laughter, no late night murmurs, only the soft rustling of the wind through the bare branches and the distant chorus of frogs by the river. The farmer adjusts his grip on the spear and steels himself for whatever may come. In this fragile moment of calm before fate arrives, all they can do is hold on to one another, cling to hope, and endure until the first pale light of morning. He dares to hope that when dawn finally comes, it will bathe their little village in gentle light and find them all still here to see it. The night continues to stretch, long and heavy, as if time itself has slowed. The men on watch shift their weight from one foot to the other, muscles stiffening in the cold. Somewhere nearby, frost forms quietly on the grass, each blade stiffening under the chill. Breath hangs pale in the air. No one speaks unless necessary. Words feel dangerous, as if sound alone could summon disaster. In the cottage, the farmer's wife lies awake beside the children. She has not slept. Every sound pulls her back to full alertness. The soft settling of the roof beams, the distant bark of a fox, the faint scrape of a branch against the wall. She listens to the rhythm of the children's breathing, slow and uneven, and counts it like a prayer. As long as they breathe, the world has not ended yet. She thinks of her mother, long buried in the churchyard, and remembers stories told by the hearth when she herself was small. stories of other wars, other years of fear. Her mother used to say that war comes like winter, slowly at first, then all at once. One day the ground is bare, the next it is frozen solid. There is no arguing with it. You only learn how to survive it. Outside, the glow on the southern horizon fades slightly, then brightens again, pulsing like a distant wound. The watchers know better than to hope too much. Fires burn unevenly. Villagers do not die quietly. Somewhere, people are screaming. Somewhere, doors are being broken down. Somewhere, families are running just as they once did. The farmer swallows and forces his eyes to remain open. Fatigue presses on him like a weight. He has worked the fields since dawn, eaten little, and stood in the cold for hours. His body begs for rest, but his mind refuses it. War has taught him that sleep is a luxury, one often paid for dearly. He remembers the first time soldiers came through when he was younger. He had been little more than a boy then. He remembers how impressive they looked at first, with their iron helmets and bright spears, how the villagers gathered to stare. He remembers how that awe turned to fear when the soldiers took chickens without asking, then pigs, then grain. He remembers his father standing silently as a soldier struck him for hesitating. He remembers the shame more than the pain. That was when he learned that war does not belong to heroes. It belongs to those who endure it. As the hours crawl toward dawn, the cold deepens. One of the watchmen stamps his feet quietly to keep blood flowing. Another pulls his cloak tighter and mutters a prayer under his breath. They all watch the road, the fields, the dark spaces between trees. Nothing moves, and yet the sense of being watched never leaves them. Just before dawn, the glow on the horizon finally dims. Whether the fires have burned themselves out or moved farther away, no one can say. The sky lightens slowly, almost reluctantly, shifting from black to deep blue, then to gray. Birds begin to stir. A single crow calls out, sharp and lonely. The farmer feels a fragile thread of relief wind its way through his chest. Another night survived. He knows better than to call it safety. In these times, survival is counted in hours, not days. When the light is strong enough to see faces clearly, the watch is called off. Men return quietly to their homes, weapons still in hand. There is no celebration, no laughter, only a shared understanding that the danger has not passed, only paused. The village wakes slowly. Doors open a crack. Smoke rises cautiously from chimneys. Someone dares to ring the chapel bell once, softly, not as an alarm, but as a signal that the night is over. Women step out, carrying buckets. Children follow close behind, eyes wide and silent. The farmer enters his cottage and finds his wife already awake, sitting upright beside the children. Their eyes meet. No words are needed. They have both endured the same night in different ways. He sits beside her and rests his forehead against hers for a moment, breathing in the familiar scent of smoke and wool and home. Breakfast is thinner than usual. A ladle of porridge, a crust of bread shared carefully. No one complains. Hunger has become a companion, always present, sometimes quiet, sometimes sharp, but never gone. The children eat slowly, watching the adults' faces for cues. When they see no panic, they relax slightly. Outside, work resumes. It always does. Fields must be tended. Animals must be fed. Water must be drawn. War or no war, the rhythms of survival continue. This is perhaps the cruelest lesson of all. Life does not stop to accommodate fear. As the farmer returns to the fields, he notices how quiet the countryside feels. Too quiet. No distant laughter, no travelers on the road. Even the birds seem fewer. War empties the land long before armies arrive. By midday, a messenger arrives on foot from a nearby hamlet. He is thin, dusty, and shaken. He brings no formal news, only fragments. A bridge burned, farms abandoned, soldiers moving north. The villagers listen in silence, absorbing each word like a blow. There is no discussion of strategy, no plans of resistance. They are not soldiers. They are people who live between armies, crushed by movements they cannot control. That evening, the village meets again by the chapel. Decisions are made quietly. Children will sleep in their clothes. Bundles will remain packed. Watch rotations will continue. Hiding places will be reviewed once more. Everyone knows their role. No one speaks of hope aloud, but it exists all the same. Hope lives in small things, in shared bread, in a hand squeezed in the dark, in the simple act of waking up together. As night falls again, lamps are dimmed, doors are barred. The watch takes its place once more at the edge of the village. The farmer stands among them, tired but steady. War has not yet reached them, but it is close enough to shape every breath, every thought, every choice. This is what it means to live through war in medieval Europe. Not glory, not banners. Just endurance. Night after night, day after day, waiting, watching, surviving. And the night settles in once more. The dot of the night deepens again, and the village settles into another uneasy rhythm. Darkness is no longer an event, it is a condition. It presses down gently, but relentlessly, like a familiar weight on the chest. The second watch takes its place. Younger men this time, eyes sharp but bodies already worn by days of labor and nights without rest. They stand apart from one another, not out of discipline, but instinct. Each man wants space to hear, to sense movement, to feel the night breathe. Inside the cottages, Sleep comes in fragments. People drift into it and are pulled back out again by memory or imagination. Dreams are thin and unsettled. Faces blur with shadows. Fires turn into screams. Roads stretch endlessly without shelter. The farmer's son wakes suddenly and sits upright on the straw mattress. For a moment, he does not know where he is. Then the smell of smoke and damp wool grounds him. He listens. Silence. He lies back down, pulling the blanket over his head, trying to remember a time when nights were only dark, not dangerous. Morning returns again, slow and pale. The days begin to blur together. One looks much like the next. Work is done quietly. Words are chosen carefully. No one wanders far. The woods are watched as closely as the road. Even the fields feel exposed now, wide and open beneath the sky. Food becomes the central concern. The farmer's wife measures grain with aching care. What once filled a sack now barely fills a bowl. Bread grows darker, heavier, made from barley and whatever husks remain. Meat disappears from the table except on rare days. Even the animals seem to sense the scarcity, their ribs more visible, their movements slower. Hunger does not arrive suddenly, it seeps in, first as an emptiness that fades by midday, then as a dull ache that never leaves, then as weakness, irritability, quiet despair. The villagers know hunger well. War always brings it. Fields that should be planted are left untouched because there are not enough hands, or because working them feels too risky. A man bending over a furrow cannot see what approaches until it is too late. The farmer remembers stories of men cut down in their own fields, bodies left where they fell, grain trampled into the earth. So they plant less, they harvest less, they eat less. Children grow thinner, cheeks hollow, eyes too large for their faces. Mothers learn how to distract them from hunger with stories, with chores, with sleep, sometimes with lies. The village's oldest woman, nearly blind and bent like a crooked branch, teaches the younger ones which weeds can be boiled into something resembling food: nettles, sorrel, roots dug from the forest edge. They taste bitter, but they fill the stomach. For now, at night, bellies growl louder than the wind. As days pass, travelers become rarer. When someone does appear on the road, the village watches from a distance. No one approaches until it is clear the stranger is alone and unarmed. Even then, caution rules. One afternoon, a woman arrives with a child clinging to her skirts. Her shoes are worn through. Her hair is matted with dust. She collapses near the well and weeps openly, too exhausted to be ashamed. She comes from a village farther south, or what remains of it. The villagers gather slowly, forming a quiet ring around her. She speaks between sobs. Soldiers, fire, shouting, running. She does not know what became of her husband. She does not know where she is going next. They give her water, a piece of bread, a place by the fire. No one asks questions that cannot be answered. That night, another mouth must be fed. Another child must be kept quiet. Another fear joins the room. This is how war spreads, not only by swords and fire, but by people, by hunger shared, by sorrow carried from place to place. The farmer watches the woman and her child sleep curled together near the hearth. He wonders how long before his own family might be reduced to the same state. He does not say the thought aloud. As weeks pass, the weather turns colder. Frost clings longer to the ground each morning. The nights grow longer. Darkness arrives earlier, lingers later. The watch continues. Some nights are quiet. Some nights are filled with distant sounds, shouts carried on the wind, the echo of metal striking metal far away. Once, the faint, rhythmic thud of something heavy, too regular to be thunder. No one sleeps well. The farmer begins to notice changes in himself. He startles more easily. His patience wears thin. Small frustrations feel enormous. He snaps at his son for spilling water, then regrets it immediately. He holds his children longer at night, as if memorizing their weight. War changes people even before it touches them. One evening, as the sun bleeds out behind the hills, the village elder speaks quietly to a few men. If the armies come closer, they may not have time to flee. Some may need to hide immediately. Others may be trapped. There is no solution that saves everyone. That night, the farmer sharpens his old blade by the fire, not because he believes he can fight soldiers, but because the act itself steadies him. The scrape of metal against stone is familiar, controlled, predictable. Outside, the wind moves through the trees. Somewhere, far beyond sight, war continues to move closer, one village at a time, and the people wait. They wake, they work, they eat what they can, they watch the road, they listen to the night. This is life beneath war's shadow. Not a single moment of drama, but an endless sequence of small, heavy moments. And it goes on. Days pass without being counted. No one in the village marks time anymore by dates or saints' days. Time is measured differently now, by how much grain remains, by how often the road stays empty, by how many nights pass without fire on the horizon. The farmer wakes before dawn again. His body does it on its own. Sleep has become shallow, easily broken. He lies still for a moment, listening. No shouting, no hooves, no crackling flames. Only wind moving along the eaves and the soft breathing of his family. Another small mercy. He rises quietly, pulling on his boots with care so they do not creak. Outside, the world is colorless. Fog lies thick across the fields, swallowing the distance. It feels safer this way. Fog hides the village from the road. Fog hides the road from the village. He walks the perimeter with two other men, scanning the edges of the settlement. They check the paths leading into the woods. They pause by the stream where footprints sometimes appear. Today, there are none. The water flows steadily, indifferent. When the fog lifts, work begins again. Not the kind of work that builds, the kind that maintains what little remains. Fences are repaired just enough to hold animals in place. Roofs are patched with scraps. Tools are sharpened and reshaped because replacements no longer come. Broken things are not discarded. Everything has value now. The blacksmith no longer makes horseshoes for trade. He repairs old ones again and again, thinning the iron with each strike. Sparks fly briefly, then fade. Even fire feels precious. Children are kept close. They no longer wander freely between cottages. They are given small tasks to keep them busy and quiet, gathering kindling, watching younger siblings, sorting beans. Anything to keep their minds from questions the adults cannot answer. The farmer's son watches the road often, too often. His father notices and gently redirects him toward chores, but the boy's eyes always return to that thin brown line cutting through the fields. It is the road that brings everything they fear. At midday, the village gathers to share news, or rather, rumors. No one knows what is true anymore. Someone heard that a nearby town paid silver to spare itself. Someone else heard that the silver only bought time. Someone swears that an army turned east instead of north. Another says the army split into smaller groups, which is worse. The village elder listens, nods, says little. He has lived long enough to know that certainty is rare in times like these. That afternoon, the farmer helps dig a shallow pit behind his cottage. Not a grave, a hiding place. He does not say this aloud. His wife brings boards and cloth. Together, they prepare a place beneath the earth where food and small valuables can be concealed. The act is slow, deliberate. Each movement feels like an admission. As they work, the farmer's wife speaks quietly. If they come in the night, she asks, how fast can we reach the woods? He answers honestly, not fast enough if we hesitate. They agree on signals, what to carry, who holds which child, where to meet if they are separated. These are not conversations people expect to have when they build a family, yet here they are, spoken calmly, carefully, as if planning a journey. The sun lowers, shadows stretch across the village. Anxiety rises with the lengthening dark. That night, the watch hears distant sounds again, not close, not clear. A faint metallic echo carried by the wind, then shouting, too far to understand, too near to ignore. No fire is seen. That almost makes it worse. Inside the cottages, People sit with their belongings packed and ready. Bundles lie by doors. Shoes are kept on. Children are instructed again not to cry, no matter what they hear. Some understand, some do not. The farmer's youngest begins to whimper in fear. His wife holds the child tightly and rocks gently, murmuring the same words over and over. It will be all right. It will be all right. She does not know if this is true. She says it anyway. Hours pass. Nothing happens. The sounds fade. The night remains intact. By morning, exhaustion clings to everyone like damp clothing. Faces are drawn, movements slow. But the village still stands. Another day, another narrow escape. But relief no longer feels clean. It comes mixed with dread. If it did not happen today, it may happen tomorrow, or the day after, or in the middle of the night when no one expects it. The farmer begins to notice how war reshapes even small decisions. He hesitates before cutting firewood too far from the village. He chooses paths that offer cover instead of speed. He listens more than he speaks. So does everyone else. Laughter becomes rare. When it does appear, it surprises people, like a sound from another life. One evening, the village elder announces a hard truth. If the fighting reaches them fully, some may not survive no matter what they do. This is said without drama, simply as fact. The villagers receive it in silence. Afterward, a few people leave quietly in the night. Families with relatives farther north. Young men hoping to avoid conscription or death. They take little with them. No one stops them. No one judges. Staying is as dangerous as leaving. The village grows smaller. The farmer watches one family depart, their cart creaking under the weight of their belongings. The children look back at the only homes they have ever known. The road swallows them. That night, the farmer dreams of fire. He wakes soaked in sweat, heart racing. He sits in the dark until his breathing slows. War has not arrived, yet it already lives inside them. This is the truth no one speaks aloud. War does not begin when soldiers cross a boundary. It begins when fear becomes routine, when sleep becomes light, when planning for escape becomes part of daily life. And so the village endures. They wake, they wait, they prepare. The shadow remains. The days no longer end with relief. Even when nothing happens, the weight of waiting remains. The village survives another night, then another morning, but survival itself begins to feel fragile, temporary. Each dawn brings work, and with it, a quiet accounting of what has been lost. The farmer stands in his doorway at sunrise and looks across the village. The smoke rising from chimneys is thinner now. Fires are kept small. Wood is saved. Everything is saved. Inside his home, his wife unties a cloth bundle and checks its contents again. Grain, a little salt, dried roots. She does not need to look. She already knows how little remains. Still, she checks, as if the act itself might change the outcome. They speak less about danger now. The fear has settled into something deeper, a constant presence. It no longer needs to be named. Instead, they speak about food. Not openly at first, only in small observations. Portions seem smaller, meals end sooner. The children ask for more and are gently told there is none. Not now, maybe later. Later becomes a word with no meaning. The farmer notices how often his thoughts return to the same question. How long can this last? He remembers seasons before the war, when meals marked the day. Bread in the morning, stew at night. Food was not plentiful, but it was reliable, predictable. Now, every bite feels uncertain. As another evening settles over the village, he watches his wife stir a pot over the fire. The liquid inside is thin, barely more than warm water, with a handful of grains floating near the surface. She stirs slowly, carefully, as if gentleness might stretch the meal further. No one complains. They eat quietly, slowly. Each spoonful is measured, deliberate. The farmer feels hunger twist inside him, sharp and insistent, but he ignores it. He lets his children finish first. His wife does the same. This has become unspoken practice. When the bowls are empty, there is no second serving. The night returns, as it always does. But something has changed. Fear no longer arrives alone. It brings hunger with it, and hunger stays. The road remains dangerous. The fields remain uncertain. The war presses closer, unseen but felt in every decision. The villagers lie down to sleep with lighter stomachs and heavier thoughts. Their dreams are shallow. Their bodies grow thinner. Their routines adapt, slowly, unwillingly. War has begun to reach them in another way, not through fire, not through steel, but through absence. And so, without ceremony, without announcement, life in the village shifts again, from waiting for violence to learning how to endure hunger. Hunger does not announce itself loudly. It settles into the body quietly, like cold seeping through stone walls. At first, it is only a distraction, a hollow feeling that can be ignored. Then it becomes a companion, present at every hour, shaping thoughts and movements. In the village, meals begin to change. Bread grows darker and heavier, made from grains that were once considered fit only for animals. The loaves are smaller now, cut carefully so that each person receives a piece, no more, no less. Crusts are never discarded. Even crumbs are saved, swept from tables and added back into tomorrow's dough. The farmer's wife wakes before dawn to prepare food. She works in near silence, listening to the slow crackle of the fire and the faint stirring of the household. She mixes flour with water, kneads slowly, patiently, as if time itself was something that could be shaped by her hands. She remembers when she used to add herbs, onions, sometimes even a little fat. Those memories feel indulgent now. The bread she bakes today is plain, dense, filling, but joyless. It keeps the body moving. That is its only purpose. Children eat differently now. They chew more slowly, as if trying to make the food last longer. They lick their fingers unconsciously, chasing the last traces of taste. When the bread is gone, they sit quietly, waiting, unsure whether the meal is truly finished or whether more might appear. It does not. At first, they ask questions. Why is there no meat? Why is the soup so thin? Why do their bellies still feel empty? The adults answer gently, then less often. Eventually, the questions stop. Hunger teaches quickly. In the fields, work becomes harder. The farmer notices his strength fading. Tasks that once felt routine now leave his arms aching and his breath short. He pauses more often, leaning on his tool, staring out across the land. The earth does not care about war. It still demands labor, but the men who work it have less to give. Some days they forage instead of farming. The women and older children gather along the forest edge, searching for anything edible. Nettles are boiled until their sting is gone. Roots are dug from cold soil. Berries are collected when they can be found, though most are long past. The village's knowledge grows darker, more practical. Which plants will fill the stomach, even if they taste bitter? Which leaves can be eaten without sickness? Which mushrooms must never be touched? These lessons are shared quietly, passed from one household to another like secrets. Animals grow thinner too. The cow's milk slows. The goat's ribs show through their coats. Chickens stop laying eggs. Some animals are slaughtered earlier than planned, not because the villagers want meat, but because feeding them through winter is no longer possible. Each slaughter is done with solemn care. Nothing is wasted. Bones are boiled for broth. Fat is rendered and saved. Even hides are preserved for later use. These moments are not celebrated. They are endured. Children watch with wide eyes and say nothing. At night, hunger makes sleep restless. Stomachs growl in the dark. People wake and turn, unable to find comfort. Dreams become strange and fragmented. Tables laden with food appear, then vanish. Fields of grain burn away before they can be harvested. The farmer wakes one night, convinced he smells bread baking. It takes him a long moment to realize it is only memory. Morning brings no relief. The village elder calls another gathering. The tone is quieter than before. No one argues. They speak of rationing more strictly, of limiting meals to certain hours, of preserving what little remains for the children and the old. No one objects. Everyone understands. what hunger will do if left unchecked. A woman collapses while drawing water from the well one afternoon. She is helped to her feet, embarrassed, insisting she is fine. But her face is pale, her movements unsteady. She has been giving her portions to her children. Many mothers have. Hunger is not shared evenly. Those who sacrifice do so silently. The farmer notices how his wife's hands tremble sometimes when she pours water, how she eats last, how she insists she is not hungry. He says nothing. Words would change nothing. The war still has not arrived, but its grip tightens all the same. As days stretch into weeks, hunger becomes the village's rhythm. It dictates work, rest, thought. It dulls emotions. Sharp fear softens into a constant, aching exhaustion. People stop imagining the future. They focus on the next meal, the next day, the next night, and still they endure because this, too, is living through war. Not the clash of armies, but the slow, quiet battle against emptiness. And it continues. Hunger begins to change how people see one another. In the village, eyes linger longer on food. A loaf on a table draws attention it never did before. A pot simmering over a fire becomes a point of quiet calculation. Who has more? Who has less? Who might still be hiding something? No one speaks of it openly, but everyone feels it. The farmer notices how quickly food disappears when shared beyond the household. When the woman and child from the south eat with them, portions shrink again. He does not resent them, but the thought rises anyway. How long can generosity survive hunger? Some nights, arguments break out in whispers. A husband and wife disputing whether to save grain or eat it now. Brothers disagreeing over how much to give an elderly parent. These are not cruel people. Hunger sharpens even gentle minds. The village elder hears more confessions now than prayers. In the chapel, people come alone, sitting in the shadows. They speak of guilt, of fear, of shame for thinking selfish thoughts. The elder listens without judgment. He has felt the same thoughts himself. Children begin to understand more than adults realize. They stop asking for food. They stop complaining. Some pretend they are not hungry at all. Others eat too quickly when food appears, afraid it might be taken away. One boy hides a crust of bread under his bedding. When it is discovered, he cries in terror, convinced he has committed some unforgivable act. The adults comfort him, but the fear remains. Hunger teaches secrecy. Bodies change. Cheeks hollow. Eyes sink. Movements slow. Illness lingers longer. Small cuts take more time to heal. The village healer does what she can with herbs and rest, but even she knows the truth. Without nourishment, the body cannot repair itself. Winter presses closer. Cold and hunger together are unforgiving companions. The farmer's wife adds more water to the soup, then more. The pot grows fuller, but the nourishment does not. Everyone knows the trick. No one comments. They eat by firelight, faces drawn, shadows deep. Outside, the road remains empty. Inside, hunger feels the space war has not yet reached. Hunger deepens when war tightens its grip. One morning, the farmer wakes to the sound of raised voices outside, not shouting but tension, controlled anger. He steps out into the cold and sees a small group gathered near the well. Two men argue quietly over a sack of grain. It belongs to neither of them anymore. It was hidden weeks ago, buried beneath a shed, meant to be used only if the fighting reached the village. Someone discovered it in the night. No accusation is spoken aloud. No name is said, but the meaning is clear. The sack is opened. The grain inside is damp, partially spoiled. It smells faintly of earth and mold. Whatever hope it once carried is gone. The village elder takes control quickly. The grain is divided among several households. No one protests. Shame hangs in the air, heavier than hunger. Trust begins to thin, not because people are cruel, but because war forces impossible choices. Hunger pushes people toward actions they never imagined themselves capable of. That day, the farmer's wife skips her meal entirely. She says she is not hungry. Her voice is steady. Her hands shake. The children notice. They do not say anything. But later, the farmer's son breaks his bread in half and places one piece back on the table. No one tells him to do this. No one tells him not to. War teaches children lessons meant for adults. Outside the village, the land grows quieter, too quiet. No traders pass through anymore. No carts creak along the road. The market town that once offered salt, dried fish, and grain might as well be another world. Travel has become too dangerous. Anyone on the road risks being mistaken for an enemy, a deserter, or prey. Without trade, the village turns inward. People barter what little they have left. A strip of cloth for a handful of flour. A repaired tool for a bowl of stew. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is given freely without thought. Even kindness becomes cautious. The farmer helps slaughter the last goat one afternoon. It is done behind the cottages, out of sight of the children. The animal does not struggle much. It is already weak. The meat is divided carefully. Some is cooked immediately. Some is salted and hung, though there is little salt to spare. The bones are cracked and boiled for broth. That night, the soup tastes richer than it has in weeks. No one celebrates. They know what this means. There will be no more milk, no more chance of breeding. One resource has been permanently erased by the war pressing in from beyond the fields. As days pass, bodies respond to hunger in quiet ways. People grow colder. Even near the fire, warmth does not reach the bones. Fingers stiffen, joints ache. Illness that would once have passed now lingers. A cough spreads through several households. Normally, it would be dismissed. Now, it is watched closely. Without food, sickness becomes dangerous. The village healer does what she can. She brews thin herbal infusions, encourages rest, but she cannot make food appear. The first death comes quietly. An old man who has eaten little for weeks does not wake one morning. He is found lying peacefully, hands folded, face calm. There is no wound, no blood, only absence. The villagers gather in silence. They do not speak of hunger, but everyone understands. War has taken another life without ever showing its face. The burial is simple. No long prayers, no feast afterward. There is no food to spare. That night, fewer people sleep. The farmer lies awake, staring at the dark ceiling. He listens to his children breathe. He counts each breath. Hunger sits in his chest like a stone. The war is still not here, but it has already claimed its first victim, and everyone knows it will not be the last. After the burial, the village changes again. Not suddenly, not visibly, but something essential shifts. People move more quietly now. Conversations shorten. Even hunger feels different. It is no longer only discomfort or weakness. It carries meaning, a reminder of what war has already taken. Meals continue, smaller than before. Fires burn lower. The routines remain, but they feel thinner, stretched to their limit. The farmer walks through the village at dusk and notices details he once ignored. A shutter left half broken, a roof sagging under its own weight, a fence leaning where it should stand firm. Repairs are delayed, not because people do not care, but because energy is scarce. Strength must be saved for what matters most. Survival. Some houses begin to empty. At first, it is subtle. A door that no longer opens at dawn. A hearth that remains cold. A garden left untended. The families are not gone all at once. They leave quietly, often at night, carrying what they can, hoping to outrun what follows. No farewells are spoken. Each departure leaves a space behind, a silence where a voice once was. The village grows uneven. Gaps appear between homes. Paths go unused. Windows stare blankly into the road. The farmer watches one such house as he passes. The door hangs open. Inside, straw lies scattered. A broken stool rests where it fell. The life that filled this space has already faded, as if erased. War does not destroy everything at once. It hollows. As the days go on, the sound of work changes. Fewer tools strike wood. Fewer voices call out across the fields. The rhythm of the village slows, then stumbles. The remaining families cluster closer together, not for warmth, but for reassurance, to remind themselves that they are not yet alone. At night, the watch continues, but fewer men stand at the edge now. Some have left, some are too weak. The darkness feels wider. One evening, a distant sound reaches the village, not shouting, not fire, the crack of wood, followed by another. The farmer freezes. He knows that sound. He has heard it before, years ago, when another village fell, timber breaking, doors forced, roof beams collapsing. It is far away for now, but the sound carries. He looks back at the cottages behind him, at the fragile shapes of homes that were never meant to withstand war. Walls of mud and wood, roofs of straw, shelter meant for seasons, not soldiers. That night, his wife packs again. Not food this time. Blankets, simple tools, things that can be carried while running. The children do not ask questions. They understand. The war has moved closer to their homes, and homes are never ready for war. Homes were never meant to last forever. They were built to shelter families from rain and cold, not from men carrying fire and iron. In the village, this truth settles slowly, like dust after a distant collapse. The farmer steps inside his cottage and looks at it differently now. The walls are thin. He can see where the mud has cracked, where straw pushes through the plaster. The roof sags slightly in the middle. He has patched it many times, always believing there would be another season to fix it properly. Now, he knows there may not be. His wife moves through the room quietly, touching objects as she passes them. A wooden bowl, a worn cloak, the edge of the hearthstone smoothed by years of use. Each item carries memory. Each one asks the same silent question: take me or leave me. They cannot take everything. They choose slowly. The smallest tools, the warmest blankets, the knife that still holds an edge, things that serve survival, not sentiment. Other objects are left behind, not because they matter less, but because carrying them would slow escape. Outside, similar decisions are being made. Some houses are already empty. Doors stand open, banging softly in the wind. Inside, beds lie unmade. Pots remain where they were last set down. It is as if the people vanished mid-breath. The village begins to feel unfamiliar. Paths once worn smooth by daily use grow rough. Weeds push through the ground where children used to play. Smoke rises from fewer chimneys. At night, darkness fills the spaces between houses more easily. The farmer notices how sound changes. Voices do not carry as far. Footsteps echo strangely. Even the wind seems louder now that fewer people are there to absorb it. One afternoon, A group of villagers returns from the woods with grim news. They have seen another settlement not far away, or what remains of it. Charred beams, blackened earth, a well filled with ash and debris. No bodies, no animals, just absence. They do not linger. Everyone understands what this means. The war no longer belongs to rumor. It is moving through the land, leaving hollow places behind it. That night, the watch hears sounds again, this time closer, a dull thud. Then another, the sound of something heavy striking wood, not nearby, but near enough. No one sleeps. The farmer's wife sits by the door, fully dressed, holding the children close. She listens for footsteps, for shouting, for the sudden rush of panic that will signal it is time to run. The farmer stands outside with the others, staring into the dark. His weapon feels small, his courage feels thin, but he stands anyway. Homes are fragile. Fire does not ask permission. He remembers stories of villages burning so fast that people barely had time to scream. Thatched roofs catching instantly, flames racing from house to house, livelihoods erased in moments. He looks back at the cottages behind him. They seem to huddle together, defenseless. By morning, the sounds fade again. The village still stands, but no one believes it will last. More families leave. Some go toward the woods. Others gamble on the road, hoping to outrun the war or find refuge behind stone walls somewhere else. Each departure strips the village of another piece of itself. The farmer helps a neighbor load a cart with what little remains. They do not speak much. Words feel inadequate. When the cart rolls away, the road feels wider than before. Houses do not grieve. People do. The empty homes begin to decay almost immediately. Rain seeps in through untended roofs. Animals wander inside, leaving tracks in the dust. Birds nest where children once slept. War does not only destroy by fire, it destroys by abandonment. As evening falls, the farmer and his wife sit together in silence. They listen to the wind move through empty spaces. The village feels thinner, stretched, as if it might tear. They both know the truth. A house is only a shelter as long as the world allows it to be, and the world no longer does. The first house does not burn in the night. It burns in the early light of morning. The farmer is in the field when he smells it. Smoke, sharp and bitter, carried on a weak wind. He freezes, heart hammering, then turns and runs toward the village. Others are already moving. Shouts rise, roar with fear. The house stands at the edge of the settlement, closest to the road. It had been empty for days. The family left quietly, taking what they could carry. Now flames lick at the thatched roof, climbing fast, hungry. No one knows who set it. It does not matter. Fire spreads quickly in places like this. Dry straw, Old wood, years of smoke-blackened beams. The villagers rush forward with buckets, passing water hand to hand from the well. They throw it onto the flames, again and again. It is not enough. The roof collapses with a sharp crack, sending sparks into the air. Heat pushes them back. Smoke fills their lungs. Someone coughs violently. Another stumbles. The farmer drags a neighbor away just as embers scatter toward the next cottage. For a moment, panic threatens to take control. Then the wind shifts. The fire slows, then dies, leaving behind a blackened skeleton of what was once a home. The walls stand crooked. The roof is gone. The smell lingers, thick and choking. Silence follows. No one speaks. They all know this was only a warning, or a test, or the beginning. The burned house remains where it is, impossible to ignore. Children stare at it from a distance, eyes wide. Adults avoid looking at it directly. It stands as proof that the village is no longer safe, no matter how quiet the road appears. That night, no one sleeps indoors without hesitation. Some families choose to move into the woods before darkness fully falls. They carry bundles on their backs, children half asleep in their arms. They do not light torches. They follow paths only they know. Others stay, unable or unwilling to leave yet. They keep watch. They listen. The farmer and his family wait until the moon rises, then slip away from the cottage. They move quietly, barefoot where possible, carrying only what they must. Behind them, their home fades into shadow. In the forest, they find others already hiding. Familiar faces emerge from the dark. No greetings are exchanged. Sound feels dangerous. They huddle together beneath trees, wrapped in blankets, breathing shallowly. Somewhere nearby, an owl calls. Farther away, something else moves. It might be an animal, it might not. Time loses meaning. Children whimper softly, then fall asleep from exhaustion. Adults remain awake, eyes fixed on the darkness beyond the trees. From the forest edge, the farmer looks back toward the village. A faint glow appears. Then another, torches. They move slowly, deliberately along the road. Shapes detach from the darkness. Voices drift toward the trees. Not loud, confident. Soldiers. They do not rush. There is no urgency in their movements. This place is already defenseless. The farmer grips his knife, knowing how useless it would be. His wife presses a hand over their youngest child's mouth, holding back a cry. The soldiers reach the first cottages. Doors are forced open. Wood splinters. Shouts break the night. Someone laughs. Fire blooms again. One house, then another. Flames leap easily from roof to roof. The village lights up, orange and red against the black sky. From the woods, the people watch their homes burn. Some sob silently. Others stare, unmoving, as if turned to stone. The farmer feels something inside him tear loose. Years of labor, generations of memory, gone in minutes. The heat reaches the forest edge. Sparks drift upward like dying stars. By the time the soldiers move on, there is little left. The village does not scream, it crackles. By dawn, only smoke remains. Charred posts, collapsed roofs, ash where hearths once burned. The farmer returns cautiously with the others. They walk through what is left, stepping over debris, recognizing places by memory alone. His cottage is gone. He stands where it once was, unable to move. This is what war does to homes. It does not conquer them, it erases them. All around, the village lies in ruin. The roar of flames and the clamor of battle have died away, leaving behind a landscape draped in silence and ash. What were homes just hours before are now blackened timbers and collapsed walls, sending up thin threads of smoke toward a pale, hazy sky. A gentle wind moves through the wreckage, stirring the warmth from dying embers and carrying the bitter scent of charred wood. Beneath the gray morning light, everything is colored in ashen hues, as if dawn itself cannot find color in this place. No voices call out now. The last cries of alarm and pain have long since faded, replaced by an uncanny quiet. In that quiet, the soft crackle of a remaining flame or the distant call of a crow sound unnaturally loud. The village's own sounds, the chatter of neighbors, the barking of a dog, the clatter of a cart, are absent. In their stead is an emptiness that presses on the survivors who remain, a weight of silence that feels as heavy as the stones of their fallen cottages. Figures move slowly among the ruins. A woman with soot-streaked cheeks kneels in the debris of what was once her home, her movements slow and dreamlike. She sifts through the charred remains of a wooden cradle, her hands trembling yet careful, as if she might still save something precious from the ashes. But the cradle is gone, just blackened scraps, and in her arms she finds only a fragment of scorched cloth. She holds it to her chest in numb silence. There are no tears. Her eyes are dry and distant, fixed on nothing, as if her grief has emptied even her ability to weep. Nearby, an old man stands before the shell of a cottage, leaning on a stick amid the smoking rubble. He gazes through the hollow frame where a door once stood. Inside, the single room is unrecognizable. His life's possessions reduced to piles of ash and broken pottery. A familiar iron pot lies cracked and half buried. He remembers its simmering vegetable stew on many evenings past. Now it is silent and cold. He does not move to retrieve it. He only stands, shoulders slumped, as if unsure what to do now that everything solid in his world has been turned into cinders at his feet. Across the street, a small child sits on a stone step that miraculously still stands. The rest of the house gone. The little boy's face is smudged with soot, tracks of yesterday's tears cutting through the dirt on his cheeks. He holds a wooden toy horse, its mane singed and tail burned away. He rocks slightly back and forth, clutching the toy with a distant, vacant expression. A young girl, perhaps his sister, stands beside him, resting a gentle hand on his shoulder. They are both silent. In the stillness, even their breathing is shallow and careful, as if any sudden sound might shatter what fragile peace remains. There is a numbness in these survivors that runs deeper than any wound. They move slowly, not only from exhaustion, but from the weight of what they have seen and lost. Each step, each gesture is heavy with shock. The mind protects itself in such moments. It wraps a person in a dull haze, and so they drift through the ruins of their own lives like ghosts, scarcely believing that what surrounds them is real. A woman passes by the charred beams of what was her neighbor's barn, and she cannot even recall how it looked before the fire. Her memories are swallowed by the stark image of blackened wood and ashes. A man calls out a name once, twice, the name of his brother, but no answer comes. He stops calling and simply stands, lips pressed together, as if feeling even that hope slip away, leaving only emptiness behind. High above, a pale sun finally breaks through the shroud of smoke, casting weak morning light upon the devastation. Where it touches, the light reveals swirling motes of ash still floating in the air, drifting lazily as if time itself has slowed. The village that once echoed with life now appears frozen in that light, a tableau of ruin and sorrow caught in fragile stillness. Yet, even in ruin, life lingers in small ways. A stray chicken, feathers singed and ruffled with dust, wanders disoriented across what was once the village green, clucking softly as it pecks at the ashen ground for seed that is no longer there. A cat slinks out from beneath a collapsed roof beam, its fur dark with soot, eyes wide and shining as it slips away quietly, seeking safety in the nearby woods. These small creatures move with instinct, unaware of the full weight of loss around them. But their mere presence among the wreckage shows that some thread of life remains, however thin and frayed. One by one, survivors begin to gather at the center of the village where the old well still stands. The stone wellhead is blackened by soot but intact, a familiar landmark in a world turned upside down. A few people shuffle towards it as if drawn by habit or need, faces blank and footsteps unsteady. They come for water, to drink, to soothe burns, to wash away grime, but also because it is the only place left that feels communal, a last remnant of their village life. At the well, a middle-aged man with a torn tunic and a bloodied bandage around his arm slowly works the creaking winch. The bucket descends into darkness and returns with a splash of water. He lifts it with effort and sets it on the stone rim. Nobody speaks as he does this. One by one, the others simply approach, cupping their hands or filling dented tin cups if they have them, taking turns with a quiet, automatic politeness that persists even now. The water is cool and clear, a small mercy. As each person drinks or gently pours a little over their soot-blackened hands and faces, trails of grey water run off them, carrying away ash but revealing gaunt, haunted faces beneath. In the wake of the catastrophe, time seems to lose meaning. The survivors do not know if minutes or hours have passed since the chaos ended. Some stand clustered in silent groups of 2 or 3, staring at nothing or at the ground, as though waiting for what they cannot say. Others wander through the debris, searching for anyone who might still be alive or anything that might be salvaged. A bent spoon here, a half-burnt loaf of bread there, miraculously spared from the flames. These become treasures in a world suddenly stripped bare. An elderly woman finds a small metal pendant in the ashes, the image of a saint still visible on its surface. She holds it tightly in her palm, the edges pressing into her skin, grounding her in this new reality. Under the broken frame of the village chapel, which now stands open to the sky, a handful of villagers gather as if by an unspoken urge to seek comfort. The roof has fallen in wooden beams and thatch piled where prayers were once whispered. A wooden cross lies charred on the ground, yet one wall still holds a faded painting of a haloed figure looking down with gentle eyes. A young man covered in dust and grief kneels in that rubble, head bowed, lips moving in silent prayer. Next to him, a mother with ash in her hair and a sleeping infant bundled against her chest closes her eyes, not praying for anything specific, just reaching out in the only way she can for a sense of hope or meaning. The chapel's silence mirrors their own, offering neither miracle nor answer, only a space where their unspoken despair can echo for a moment. As the day wears on, a dull weariness settles over those who remain. They have done all they can for now, found the living, gathered the wounded, doused the last of the fires. There is little left to eat, less to call their own. In small, hesitant motions, they begin to take stock of their reality. A family of 4 huddles by the remnants of their cottage, wrapping themselves in a singed blanket they pulled from the debris. They have no roof now save the open sky, no door to bar against the elements or any roaming threat. Yet they cling to each other, drawing a modicum of warmth from shared body heat and the mere fact of each other's presence. Others prepare to leave. With homes destroyed and winter perhaps approaching, some know they cannot survive here long without shelter or stores. A pair of brothers salvage a wheelbarrow from a collapsed shed, its wooden wheel wobbling but functional. They load it with a few sacks of grain found unburnt in the corner of a barn, along with a rolled up piece of canvas and whatever meager possessions they recovered from the ash. Their faces are expressionless as they work, communicating only in nods and short gestures. There is an understanding that they must depart, maybe walk to the next village in hope of refuge with distant kin, or wander until they find help. As they push the wheelbarrow through the ruins and onto the road beyond, a few others follow slowly, forming a small procession of the displaced. They do not look back. The sight of their village is too painful and too changed to bear a final glance. Instead, they keep their eyes on the rutted dirt road ahead, each step taking them further from the only home they have ever known, now unrecognizable. Their departure is quiet, marked by the soft creak of the wheelbarrow and the shuffling of feet. Those who remain watch in silence, some perhaps wishing to go, but lacking the strength or spirit to move just yet. By late afternoon, the light begins to mellow into a dull gold. The smoke that hung over the village has thinned, and through the still air the scent of burnt wood mingles with a faint hint of grass and earth from the surrounding fields. The fields themselves are trampled and scorched in places, but here and there untouched corners still hold swaying wildflowers or rows of cabbages that somehow escaped destruction. The contrast is jarring, life continuing in patches, indifferent to the ruin just yards away. It is in this uneasy stillness that the first distant sounds appear on the edge of hearing. At first, it is easy to dismiss them as echoes of the earlier chaos or the stirring of breeze through the trees. A distant clink of metal, a rhythm of dull thuds that could be mistaken for one's own heartbeat after a day of terror. But these sounds grow steadier, drawing the attention of a few villagers who stand in the open. They turn their heads toward the western road, eyes narrowing. Far down the road, beyond the fields, and near the tree line, there is movement. Small shapes, too far to discern clearly, approach in a loose column. The sun, descending toward the horizon behind them, catches occasionally on something bright metal catching the light. The dull thuds form into the pattern of many footsteps on earth, interspersed with a heavier clop of hooves, and that faint metal sound. Now it is clearly the jingle of bridles and the rattle of armor or weapons against tired bodies. A ripple of quiet alarm passes through those villagers who remain amid the ruins. Some freeze where they stand, the blood draining from their faces as they recall the horror of armed men in their midst not long ago. Others, those with enough strength or presence of mind, begin to move with renewed urgency. A mother scoops up a toddler who had been dozing against her shoulder and quickly ducks behind the stone well, pressing her back to it as though it could shield them both from view. An old couple clasp hands and hobble as fast as they are able behind the charred husk of a wagon. The few children still lingering in the open are hastily gathered by whoever is nearest and guided off the main road into the shadows, behind piles of debris, into ditches, anywhere out of sight. They all know what it means when soldiers are coming. It could be the same man returning to take whatever they missed, or another band of warriors altogether. In war, any armed group is a threat when you are a defenseless villager. The instinct to hide runs deep. Hearts that had begun to steady now pound once more with fear. In that terse silence, the only sounds are the scurry of feet finding cover and the hushed panting of the frightened as they crouch low. A boy presses himself flat against the ground behind a fallen oak door, trying to make himself as small as possible, his eyes squeezed shut as if to shut out the world. A girl holds her little sister so tightly that both tremble as they duck beneath the remains of a wooden cart, its one remaining wheel still faintly spinning from being jostled in their haste. From their hiding places, some villagers peer out cautiously between broken walls and through gaps in rubble. They see more clearly now the column of soldiers as it nears the outskirts of the village. There are perhaps 24 men, maybe more, trudging along the road with a weary gait. At the front rides a man on horseback, likely an officer or someone of status, though his cape is dusty and torn, and the horse itself plods with lowered head. Behind him, a standard-bearer carries a tattered banner, its colors muted by dust, and its emblem unrecognizable at a distance, hanging limp in the still air. The soldiers are splashed with mud up to their knees, their armor dulled and dented. Many have strips of cloth tied around arms or legs, crude bandages stained brown with old blood. These men have seen battle recently. It clings to them in the sag of their shoulders and the hollow look in their eyes. As they draw nearer, the villagers can make out their faces, rough with stubble, streaked with sweat and dirt. They look not like triumphant victors, but like men who have marched too far and seen too much. Young faces that seem aged beyond their years, older men carrying the 1,000-yard stare of exhaustion. The column moves at a slow pace, the rhythm of their march broken now and then when one of the soldiers stumbles on the uneven road, or when a horse snorts and tosses its head, tugging against the reins. They say little to each other. Now and then a curt order is murmured from the rider at the front, or a man mutters a curse as he shifts a heavy pack on his shoulders. But mostly they march in silence, accompanied only by the jangle of mail and harness, the creak of leather, and the scuff of their boots on the dirt. At the edge of the ruined village, the column halts. The leader on horseback raises a hand, signaling a stop. The soldiers gratefully ease their march. A few lean on their spears or swords, like walking sticks, catching their breath. Dust swirls around their feet as they come to a standstill. From their hiding places, the villagers watch with bated breath. Every rustle seems too loud. A woman presses her palm over her child's mouth when the child starts to whimper, and she can feel the tiny body shaking against her. In the mind of each hiding villager, memories flash of what happened the last time armed men came. The shouting, the violence, the helplessness. A cold dread coils in their stomachs as they wonder if it is about to happen all over again. The soldiers do not immediately fan out or attack. Instead, many simply stand or drop onto makeshift seats. One sits on a fallen log by the road, another on a pile of stones that once were part of a cottage wall. A man with a limping gait lowers himself with a groan to sit on the edge of the shattered well trough, not noticing or not caring that the very people who lived here might be hiding only a few feet away. He stretches out his leg and massages it through the tear in his hose, where a bandage is visible, stained, and in need of changing. They are tired. It radiates from them in every motion or lack of motion. One soldier takes off his helmet and runs a hand through sweat-matted hair, then simply holds the helmet in his lap, staring at nothing, chest heaving as he catches his breath. Another man adjusts the strap of his leather cuirass, grimacing as if bruised beneath. A few sip from leather flasks of water or wine at their belts, tilting back their heads. Their throats bob as they swallow, and a couple of them wipe their mouths with the backs of dirty hands. In those gestures, there is a kind of routine, casualness, as if they have done this 1,000 times. Marched into a broken village, halted to rest, concerned first with their aching feet and dry throats before anything else. From behind a half-collapsed stone wall, a young villager watches a pair of soldiers not 20 paces away. They have set down their spears and taken a seat on an overturned trough that once served livestock. The young man can see their faces clearly. One is scarcely older than himself, maybe 19 or 20, with blonde hair and a spattering of freckles on sunburnt skin. But the youthfulness stops at his expression. The soldier's eyes are rimmed red from dust and lack of sleep, and they stare out with a hardness or emptiness that the villager cannot quite understand. The other soldier is older, dark-bearded, with a jagged scar across his forearm. He sits hunched, elbows on knees, turning a dagger over and over in his hands in a habitual motion. Neither of them is speaking. They just sit in a weary companionship, sharing the silence as much as the villagers do. The officer on the horse remains mounted, surveying the area. His horse shifts and stamps as he peers from one end of the ruined street to the other. Perhaps he is wary of an ambush, or simply taking stock of where they have ended up. He sniffs the air. The scent of smoke still lingers strongly. He can see the blackened outlines of homes and the cinders still smoking. His expression is unreadable from afar, but He does not signal an alarm. Likely, they expected to find destruction. Perhaps they ride in the wake of the battle that caused this ruin, following the path of an army that came before them. After a few minutes, the officer dismounts stiffly. A younger man, maybe a squire or just another soldier, takes the reins of the horse and leads it a few steps to let it drink from a puddle near the well. The officer stretches his back and legs. One can imagine the ache from long hours of riding etched in the tightness of his movements. He removes his gloves and flexes his fingers, then gestures to a couple of men. In a low voice, he gives orders. The exact words are indistinct to the villagers' ears, but two soldiers nod and begin to move off, walking slowly toward the edges of the village, scanning as they go. Perhaps they are searching for any remaining enemy fighters or assessing if anyone is here at all. The two soldiers walk carefully through the ruins. One carries a sword drawn, the other a spear. They poke at the occasional pile of debris or peer into roofless structures. Every so often one calls out in a rough voice, a simple question cast into the emptiness, asking if anyone remains, his tone edged more with fatigue than aggression. He is answered only by silence and the crackle of charred wood. Behind walls and under carts, villagers press themselves smaller, hearts thudding. They pray these men will think the village truly empty, or simply not bother to search too thoroughly. One soldier nears the very wall where a family hides. A father, mother, and their teenage daughter crouched in the shadows. The father holds a shovel handle in white-knuckled hands, as if he could use it to defend his family, but he knows too well it would be hopeless if they were found. The soldier's boots crunch on broken bits of pottery as he steps closer. He is young, and his face is drawn with exhaustion, but his eyes are alert, darting here and there. He pauses just on the other side of the wall from the family, so close that the mother can see a smear of dried blood on the hem of his tunic and a tear in the leather of his boot. The soldier listens. Perhaps he senses something, the faint sound of breathing or a feeling of being watched. He slowly moves a little closer, raising his sword an inch. The family holds its collective breath. The mother silently pleads, eyes squeezed shut, arm around her daughter's shoulders. The daughter has tears spilling down her cheeks, but she dares not make a sound. The father tightens his grip on the shovel handle, though his hands tremble. Just as it seems the soldier might peer over the wall, a sudden shout breaks the quiet, a hoarse voice exclaiming that food has been found, the words echoing eerily in the silence. The soldier by the wall hesitates, glancing back toward that call. Hunger wars with duty on his face. After a heartbeat, hunger wins. With a dismissive grunt, he turns away from the wall and strides back toward his comrades, leaving the cowering family undiscovered. Only when he has gone do the three exchange a glance and allow themselves to silently breathe again, tears of relief mingling with their fear. The soldiers converge around the discovery. Under a scorched trapdoor, they found a cache of turnips and potatoes stored in the cool earth of a dirt cellar beneath a half-burned house. The find is met with low exclamations of rough satisfaction. The men gather, forming a loose circle as one kneels and passes out a few of the dirt-covered vegetables. Knives flash in the late sunlight as they slice off bits to eat raw, too impatient or hungry to bother with cooking. Some merely wipe the dirt off on their sleeves and bite straight in, the crunch of raw turnip audible in the quiet air. A few soldiers laugh, a dry, cracked sound, as one of them pulls a particularly large potato from the cache and holds it up like a trophy. For the villagers watching, this moment is a blend of relief and bitterness. Relief that the soldiers' attention is, for now, on filling their stomachs rather than searching out people. Bitterness that the last of their winter stores, hidden in hope it would see them through lean times, is being devoured by the very men who brought this destruction or those who march in its wake. A woman in hiding recognizes the cellar as her own and closes her eyes in grief as she watches the turnips she had carefully gathered for her family's table to become a feast for armed strangers. Yet even that bitterness is muted by the overwhelming desire to remain unseen and safe. She would not dare to cry out or protest, for fear is far greater than her anger. As the soldiers eat, their guard lowers slightly. They speak more now, in low voices. From behind the well, a villager can make out snippets of their talk as two men wander nearby, munching on potatoes. One complains about a blister on his foot, cursing the endless marching. The other man mumbles in agreement and wonders aloud how far it is to the next town. Their language is coarse and matter-of-fact. They sound less like conquerors and more like laborers, begrudgingly going about a hard task. To them, perhaps, this village is just another nameless place on their route, noteworthy only for the food they found and the short rest it provides. A short distance away, a soldier has wandered from the group, chewing thoughtfully on a turnip. He seems drawn by the still figure of the chapel at the village's center. Its half-standing walls and rubble interior catch his eye. Perhaps he is a pious man, or merely curious. He steps through the missing doorway into the ruins of the chapel. The few villagers hidden nearby watch anxiously, but he appears solitary and calm. Inside, he pauses upon seeing the kneeling young man and the mother with her baby. The pair who had taken refuge there in prayer after the attack. They are partially hidden in shadow, but their forms are unmistakable to someone standing within the open structure. The soldier stops, a piece of turnip still in his hand. The young man looks up slowly, realizing someone stands behind him. His instinct is to bolt or raise his hands in surrender, but in the stillness he does neither. He is too exhausted and drained to even stand. The mother, holding her infant, instinctively shrinks back against a fallen beam, her eyes wide on the armed figure before them. For a long moment, the soldier and the villagers in the chapel regard each other in silence. The soldier's sword remains sheathed at his side. In his hand is only the half-eaten turnip, which now slips from his fingers to thud softly on the chapel's dirt floor. He seems taken aback. Perhaps he expected the village to be empty of all but corpses. Perhaps something in the tableau of the praying man and the mother and child touches a part of him that he'd closed off. His face is young, smeared with ash. He swallows and glances over his shoulder towards his comrades, who are still occupied with their find. Then, slowly, he raises his free hand, palm outward, in a gesture that could mean he intends no harm. He backs away a step, then another, out of the chapel. He leaves them there without a word, rejoining the others outside. If asked, maybe he will lie that he saw no one, or maybe he simply cannot bring himself to drag two weary, unarmed souls out of a sanctuary. Whatever his reasons, he does not betray their presence. The mother and young man remain crouched in silence, hardly daring to believe their fortune. After some time, the officer gives a low command that echoes down the ruined street. The rest period is over. The soldiers gather themselves, grumbling under their breath but obeying. Those who removed helmets or gear put them back on. The one who had been sitting on the well trough stands and limps back to the road. Another helps a comrade adjust the strap of a heavy sack across his sore shoulders. Their canteens are refilled from the well, their pockets bulging slightly with a few remaining potatoes or turnips, and the men slowly reform their column. The horseman swings back into his saddle with a visible wince, his joints stiff. He barks an order to fall in. In small, subtle ways, the soldiers have changed in the brief respite. Shoulders are a bit less slumped, steps slightly steadier with some food in their bellies and water in their throats. The weariness remains etched deep, but this interlude has revived them just enough to continue. A few share quiet words, black humor, about the taste of raw turnip, or a muttered jest to lighten their spirits, brief flickers of camaraderie in an otherwise grim march. To the hidden villagers, these sounds of almost normal human chatter amidst ruin are strangely jarring. Laughter, however faint, seems out of place in their shattered world. Yet it drifts to their ears as the soldiers prepare to depart. The officer's voice calls out, firming up the line. With resigned sighs and grunts, the men hoist weapons and shields, lift packs once more, and fall back into their marching order. Boots shuffle in the dust, and the column begins to move through the heart of the ruined village. They tread the main road, stepping around blackened debris. A few glance sidewise at the destruction, at a gutted home, at the still smouldering remains of what might have been a granary Their expressions remain unreadable or simply indifferent. To many of these soldiers, this is not the first ruined village they have seen, nor will it be the last. War has carved a path across the land, and such sights are now grimly familiar. Some eyes slide away quickly, as if trying not to register any more details that might haunt them later. Others linger for a moment on particular scenes: a toppled cart wheel, a cluster of silent chickens pecking in the dirt, or perhaps a glimpse of a human form lying motionless in a doorway. And then they, too, face forward and march on. As the soldiers pass through, the villagers remain as still as statues in their hiding places. They dare not move or reveal themselves until they are sure the threat is leaving. Yet, in every mind there is the question: will the soldiers simply pass, or will they torch what little is left, or hunt down the living souls still cowering in their path? Each heartbeat feels elongated as the armed men file by mere yards from concealed eyes. A baby whimpers softly in the bundle on its mother's back, where she crouches behind a half wall. Immediately she bounces it gently, biting her lip, praying for the infant to remain quiet. The crunch of boots on cinders, the snort of a horse, the clink of mail, these sounds grow louder, peak as the column is in the center of the village, then slowly start to recede as the first ranks move beyond toward the eastern road out. Not all the soldiers are content to simply march through without incident. As they near the outskirts on the far side of the village, two men at the tail of the column break away briefly. Perhaps they spotted something of interest, a glint in the wreckage, or an undefended chicken wandering too close. One of them, a burly fellow with a missing tooth, clucks his tongue and approaches a small coop behind a burned hut, where a few hens have miraculously survived the earlier carnage. He moves with the eagerness of a starving man who sees a potential meal in a flurry of squawking and flying feathers. He manages to grab one of the hens by the neck. The creature flaps frantically, but the soldier holds it tight, grinning at his prize. The second soldier stands guard, scanning the ruins for any interference. He might suspect villagers are near, or maybe he's just watching for their officer's gaze. Satisfied that no one will stop them, they tie the hen's legs with a bit of twine and add it to their spoils. Tonight, perhaps, they will have meat to roast. This small act of thievery is hardly the worst these villagers have seen, but it feels like yet another violation. One girl, peering from under a cracked wagon, recognizes the hen as one that belonged to her family. She watches with fists balled in helpless anger as the soldier tucks the squirming bird under his arm. But she stays still and silent. There is nothing she can do. War has made them all voiceless to their own suffering, for to speak up is to invite more danger. Another soldier lingers by a half-collapsed cottage poking at something with the toe of his boot. It appears he has found a body, a victim of the prior day's violence, now just a lifeless shape amid the debris. He nudges it, perhaps, to roll it over, checking for anything of value. It is a harsh and common practicality. The dead have no need of coin or trinkets, and a soldier's life can sometimes depend on what he scavenges. Finding nothing obvious, or perhaps moved by some flicker of decency or discomfort, he stops. He looks at the face of the corpse for a moment. Whatever he sees there causes him to quickly avert his eyes and turn away, a muscle in his jaw tightening. He returns to the marching line with a quick step, as if to leave that sight behind him as swiftly as possible. Bit by bit, the column passes through and out of the village, like a snake slithering its length over ruin and onward. The officer at the head rides on, barely glancing back, mind likely already on the next leg of their journey. A few straggling soldiers cast final looks over their shoulders at the place they're leaving, perhaps scanning for threats, or simply out of habit. What they leave behind is a village stripped of nearly everything, first by fire and violence, and now whatever scraps remained have been picked over. To these soldiers, this broken hamlet is merely another mark on the map of their endless campaign, another nameless stop that will blur into the countless others behind them. As dusk deepens, they vanish around the bend of the road, silhouettes melding into the coming night, their minds already turned toward the next campfire or the next battle awaiting them. In their wake, only footprints in the ash and a little less food in the larder remain to show they had ever been here. When the last soldier disappears down the road, when the jingle of harness and the tromp of feet fades beyond the eastern bend, a long exhale seems to sigh from the very ruins themselves. The villagers remain in hiding a while longer, straining ears to ensure the danger has truly passed. Only when the silence of evening begins to creep back, broken by a lonely breeze, and the distant calls of evening birds, do the first figures emerge from their hiding places. One by one, heads lift from behind walls, eyes peer over rims of barrels and out of ditches. Slowly, like wary animals, after a predator has gone, the survivors reveal themselves again in the open. A teenage boy uncurls from a hollow under a fallen roof beam, helping his limping father up from where they had crouched. The mother with the baby at the well eases up to peer around, then sinks back with tears of relief as her child fusses softly against her neck, sensing her stress ebb. The family behind the stone wall finally stands, legs cramped and hearts still hammering, but alive and untouched. They have survived another wave of the storm that is war, albeit barely. In truth, they have no more control over its course than a small boat has over a great flood. War sweeps through their lives of its own will, like a merciless tide, and they are left only to endure its passing as best they can, to cling to what little remains. Some might whisper a prayer of thanks. Others might simply close their eyes and tilt their heads toward the sky, cherishing a rare moment of peace as dusk falls. The group that left earlier with the wheelbarrow is long gone down the road by now. Perhaps they crossed paths with the soldiers at a distance, or perhaps they took a different route across fields to avoid them. Those who remain know they must decide soon whether to stay another night in this wreckage or follow into the unknown. But for this moment, as night gently asserts itself, decisions are left for tomorrow. A cool breeze arrives with the twilight, drawing out the smells of dew and distant rain to mingle with lingering smoke. The villagers still present gather once more near the well, as it is central and gives a fragile sense of normalcy. They speak in hushed tones, discussing the necessities of the night. In that soft communication, there is an unspoken rule to not mention the terror that just passed in broad detail. Everyone felt it, everyone knows. Instead, they focus on small, immediate tasks. How to keep a fire alive safely for warmth without drawing attention. Who will take a turn watching the road as others sleep, and where to lay the injured to rest more comfortably. As darkness falls, the ruined village settles into an uneasy rest. A few faint stars prick through the veil of smoke and cloud overhead. In what was once the village square, some survivors cluster together, sharing thin blankets and the body heat of one another under a crumbling wall. Others curl up alone in corners they deem safe enough, with perhaps a salvaged cloak or a pile of straw as bedding. The ground is hard and cold, but they are too drained to complain. Somewhere in the distant woods, beyond the fields, wolves howl, a long, haunting cry at the rising moon. Normally, such a sound might send shivers of fear through these villages, but tonight it is just one more lonely voice in the darkness. It reminds them that the world around continues, that nature cares nothing for their suffering. In a way, its wild, mournful call is a companion to their grief. Lying awake under the broken skeleton of her home, a young woman listens to the night sounds and finds her eyes growing heavy. In her arms, she cradles that fragment of scorched cloth she retrieved, a remnant of the cradle that once held her infant son. She has not found the child's body. Perhaps the baby was carried off in the chaos or lost to the flames. The uncertainty is a bruise on her soul, but exhaustion dulls even that pain for the moment. She strokes the burnt cloth absent-mindedly, as if lulling a baby to sleep, and as the stars wheel above, she finally drifts into a fitful slumber. In her dreams, perhaps she hears lullabies instead of screams, if only for a merciful moment. Around the village, one by one, others succumb to a similar heavy sleep, a sleep of utter fatigue and emotional collapse. A few remain awake, keeping watch despite drooping eyes, listening for any sign of the soldier's return or another threat. But only the normal whispers of night reach their ears. The rustle of leaves, the crackle of cooling timbers, the murmur of distant insects. So ends this day of fire and fear, in reluctant sleep and a fragile peace. The war has moved on, at least for now, leaving its scars on this village and its people. And in that war's wake, in the quiet hours of the night, there is finally a stillness, the kind that allows tired souls to breathe, to mourn without new terror, and to gather the strength to face the next dawn. When the soldiers are gone, the silence they leave behind feels heavier than their presence. The road lies empty again. Dust settles slowly back onto the ground. Footprints remain pressed into ash and dirt, clear signs that armed men were here only moments ago. The villagers stare at those marks for a long time, as if trying to decide whether they are real. No one follows the soldiers. No one watches them disappear beyond the bend. Once they are gone, people turn inward. The farmer steps cautiously into the open. His legs feel weak, not from hunger alone, but from the strain of holding himself still for so long. Around him, others emerge in the same hesitant way. They glance at one another, silently counting who is still alive. They speak in murmurs. Someone mentions the food that is gone. Another points out the chicken taken from the coop. A third notices the well bucket left overturned, water spilling uselessly into the dirt. These are small things, almost meaningless compared to what has already been lost. Yet they cut deeply. The soldiers did not only take supplies, they took the feeling of safety that had barely begun to return. As evening deepens, exhaustion overtakes fear. People sit where they stand. Some lean against broken walls. Others lower themselves onto the cold ground. There is no energy left for anger. The farmer watches his wife help a neighbor bind a burn with a strip torn from a ruined cloak. The wound is not deep, but it looks angry already. Red, swollen, dirt clings to the skin. There is no clean water to wash it properly, no herbs left that might help. They do what they can. Night comes quietly. Fires are lit again, small and carefully hidden, more for warmth than cooking. Shadows stretch long across the ruins. The smell of smoke returns, but this time it is controlled, restrained, born of necessity rather than violence. People settle into uneasy rest. Some sleep immediately, bodies collapsing under the weight of terror and fatigue. Others lie awake, listening to the night, waiting for the sound of boots that does not come. The farmer lies beside his family beneath a broken beam, staring up at the stars through what was once a roof. He realizes that the soldiers who passed through will likely never think of this place again. To them, it was a pause, a moment, a source of food and rest. To the villagers, it was another wound that may never heal. In the distance, faint lights flicker on the horizon. Campfires, another army, or perhaps the same one, already moving on. War does not stop to look back. It moves forward, leaving people to gather what remains. By morning, the villagers will face the consequences of the soldiers passing. Fewer supplies, new injuries, new fear, and something else, quieter but more dangerous. Illness. Illness arrives without noise. There is no warning, no single moment when anyone can say it began. It simply settles into the village, carried on exhaustion, hunger, and the small injuries no one had time to treat. The farmer notices it first in the mornings. People move more slowly than before. Some do not rise at all. Coughs linger longer in the cold air. Faces look dull, eyes unfocused. The body, already weakened by hunger, begins to fail in quiet ways. The burn on the neighbor's arm darkens. The skin tightens and weeps. The smell is faint at first, then unmistakable. Infection. There is no word for it that matters. Everyone knows what it means. The village healer works constantly. She boils water when she can. She cleans wounds as best as possible with cloth already used too many times. She whispers reassurances she does not fully believe. There are no miracles left. Cuts that once would have healed now swell and ache. Fevers come and go, leaving people trembling in their bedding. Children grow listless, their energy drained. Mothers sit beside them through the night, feeling helpless. Water becomes suspect. The well still stands, but ash has fallen into it. Debris from burned houses washes into the stream after rain. The water tastes different now, metallic, bitter. Still, people drink. There is no alternative. Soon stomachs begin to cramp. Diarrhea weakens those already frail. People grow thinner, faster. The village smells change. Sweat, smoke, sickness. Death does not come dramatically. It comes quietly, often at night. An elderly woman who survived the fire does not survive the fever. She drifts into sleep and does not wake. Her daughter sits beside her until morning, holding a hand that slowly grows cold. A young man with a deep cut on his leg tries to walk it off. He insists he will be fine. Within days, the wound turns black around the edges. He grows confused, then silent. He dies before the healer can do anything more. Each death feels heavier than the last. There is no time to mourn properly, no food for gatherings, no strength for ritual. Bodies are wrapped and buried quickly, sometimes in shallow graves if the ground is too hard. The farmer helps dig more graves than he ever thought he would. His hands blister, his back aches. He stops counting after a while. The children notice the absences. They ask where certain people have gone. The answers are vague. Gone to rest, gone to God, gone away. The children accept this quietly, as they have learned to accept many things. Sleep becomes strange. Those who are sick drift in and out of fevered dreams. Those who are healthy enough lie awake, listening to the sounds of coughing and labored breathing around them. Night feels long and watchful. The healer collapses one evening, overcome by exhaustion and fever herself. There is no one to replace her. Knowledge alone is not enough when the body fails. The farmer's wife falls ill soon after. At first, it is only weakness, then chills, then heat. She insists on continuing to care for the children, but her steps falter. Her voice grows thin. The farmer watches helplessly as she fades, doing what he can. Cool cloths, whispered prayers, holding her hand. She survives. Others do not. By the time the fevers ease, the village is smaller again, quieter. Those who remain move carefully, as if afraid to disturb the fragile balance that has returned. The war has passed through. The soldiers are gone. The fires have burned out. Yet the dead remain, and so do the scars. This is how war finishes its work, not with swords, but with sickness. Morning returns again, not bright, not hopeful, just present. The farmer wakes before the light reaches the horizon. His body moves out of habit more than will. He listens first, as he has learned to do. No shouting, no boots, no fire. Only wind moving through broken wood and the distant sound of birds returning cautiously to the fields. He rises. Around him, the village stirs slowly. Fewer people now, fewer sounds. But life, thin and stubborn, continues. Someone rekindles a small fire. Another person walks toward the well, careful where they step among the ruins. A child drags a blanket closer around their shoulders and sits up, eyes still heavy with sleep. There is work to do. There is always work. Debris must be cleared. Paths must be made passable again. The living must find ways to shelter themselves among the remains of what was lost. No one speaks of rebuilding yet. It feels too soon, too ambitious. They focus on today. The farmer helps straighten a fallen beam so that a makeshift lean-to can stand through the night. He ties rope with practiced hands, fingers slower than they once were, but steady. Nearby, his wife sits on a low stone, watching the children while she rests. Her illness has left her weak, but she is alive. That is enough. Food is prepared again, still scarce, still simple, but it exists. A thin soup shared between fewer mouths, a piece of bread passed carefully from hand to hand. People eat slowly, not out of fear now, but out of respect for what little remains. There is no conversation during the meal, only presence. The day passes in small motions. Someone mends torn clothing with thread salvaged from burned fabric. Someone else gathers wood from farther away than before, scanning the land as they walk. A child finds a bird's feather and holds it like a treasure. Grief no longer arrives in waves, it settles. People carry it with them as they work. It shows in the way shoulders slump, in how eyes linger on empty spaces where houses once stood, where voices once sounded. But still, they endure. At night, watch is kept again, not because an army is near, but because the habit remains. War has taught them vigilance, and it does not leave easily. The farmer stands at the edge of what used to be the village road, looking into darkness. He no longer imagines safety as something permanent. Safety is a pause, a moment. He accepts this. The stars appear one by one. The sky is wide, indifferent. Somewhere far away, the war continues. Armies move, cities prepare, kings decide. None of that feels real here. Here, life is measured by breath, by warmth, by whether the morning comes quietly. The villagers lie down to sleep again, wherever they can, beneath salvaged boards, under cloth stretched between posts, against stone still warm from the day. Children sleep first. Adults follow more slowly. There is no ending to this story, only continuation. They will wake again. They will work again. They will endure. This is what it means to live through war in medieval Europe. Not to fight, not to win, but to remain.